Hi folks, welcome back to the Wikipedia world, and I am Abhinay Gupta. And today again we'll continue with the chapter Audit and Auditor. Right? So in the previous lecture we discussed about the government companies, the involvement of the CAG, right? The supplementary audit and stuff. We also discussed about the auditing standard, the involvement of NAFRA, right? The National Financial Reporting Authority and stuff. So these were some other things that we have covered, right? And then when we were discussing the topics in the previous lecture, we came across a point. So we were discussing about the duties and powers of an auditor, right? In the case of branch audit, that the powers of the branch auditor will be the same in the case of the fraud reporting as well. And then I said that the fraud reporting will be covered in the next lecture, right? So here I am again back with what I've said, is that we will be taking ahead the discussion on the reporting of fraud by an auditor, right? And that will be contained in section 143 subsection 12 to subsection 15. Reporting of fraud by auditor. Right? So first we need to understand when is it required. So when an auditor has reason to believe that fraud is committed by the employees or officers of the company. Right? So now let's take the situation. I am an auditor, right? I went to the company and I was performing my audit on the daily basis. Then suddenly one fine day I come across certain accounts, certain transactions that I see are not appropriate. Right? And when I say it's not appropriate, doesn't mean that there is a lack of certain knowledge, there is a lack of certain assumptions over there, but the point is there is a deliberate error. Right? And an error is an error, but a deliberate error is a fraud. Right? If something goes wrong deliberately, somebody plans to do something wrong, that is termed as fraud. Right? So if I as an auditor, if I have certain reasons to believe that this offense, what has happened, that is involving fraud, has been committed against the company, right, and has been committed by their own officers or employees of the company, right, then I am supposed to report about the fraud in my auditor's report. And how do I understand that it has been done by officers or employees? Like we read about it, right? But in practical scenario, if I understand, how do I know? The basic thing is that there are a set of controls, right? And if certain control has been surpassed, if somebody has tried to breach certain control or found if there is a deficiency in certain control, then what happens is you go ahead and breach that control in order to take advantage of that moment. And then you go ahead for some undesirable benefits for yourself as an employer officer, and that is prejudicial to the interest of the company. Then I term it as fraud. And it's my responsibility to write down or mention the entire scenario and what has happened and what is the amount involved in that fraud and who would be the officer and employee that would be involved into it. Right? Maybe I do not exactly come across a person, right? But I can come across a department. I can come across a position where a control has been breached. I can come across generically to a set of individuals, right, who would be involved, without whose consent or without whose knowledge it could not have been committed. That was a little towards the practical part, right? There are more detailed analysis about fraud because frauds are not very easy to capture. Right? Like I remember if I talk about my working days, so there was a investigation on the fraud of Wipro that has taken place, right? There was an investigation of fraud on Reebok also at that point of time. So when we went across to understand those fraud reporting, there were a lot of things that we could not even think of that has happened. Right? So we have to be very careful. Like you understand the case of Satyam as well. So for a couple of years, nobody knew what's happening. One fine day there was an alarm about the FDs and the banks, that their bank balances and FDs are so high. How is it possible? Right? So a lot of things it goes on. So you see frauds and scam in a lot of companies these days. Right? So whatever the auditor identifies by themselves, it is the responsibility of the auditor to report it into their report. Right? And to whom will this report go? The report on fraud specifically. The report on fraud specifically will go to the central government. and that has to be on an immediate basis. Right? Now, when we talk about immediate basis and stuff, doesn't mean that, okay, today I found something, tomorrow I call up somebody in the central government and say, hey, look, I found this fraud in this company. Please come. I need to report you. Or please send me your address, I'll send this report to you. No, that does not mean immediately. What we mean by immediate effect is to take action immediately. And then the action starts, right? And then there is a procedure that the action has to go through to reach the destination. Not everything I think is a fraud, I can just call up central government. No, I cannot. Right? When we say central government, what does that mean? Do you have a toll-free central government number? That okay, hello, central government this side? It's not like that, right? So there's a procedure of how it goes ahead. So time and manner of reporting. So this entire thing, as I said, will be dealt by Rule 13. Right? Of when and how to go ahead. In what manner should I report and when should I report? That will be dealt by Rule 13. Right? So we'll come to Rule 13. Before that, we'll just wind up with the other things, and then we'll focus our entire discussion to Rule 13 in today's lecture. Right? Now, next thing that you need to understand is that there is no liability on the auditor. Right? Now, understand, when we go ahead for audit, right, there is one specific thing, that we cannot disclose any information of the client, right, to any third person unless we have the consent of the client first, and second, unless it is required by law. So over here you can say that yes, this information that I pass on to the central government is required by law, right? So that is why an auditor does not get any liability on himself for breach of that conduct. Right? An auditor is supposed to breach that conduct in this point of time because the law requires the auditor to do so. Right? So if I put it in a plain statement, any auditor will never be deemed to be guilty of any breach of his duty for the reason of reporting any matter to the central government if it is done in good faith. Right? Then there are certain provisions which are applicable to other auditors also. So these provisions about the fraud reporting, right, it is applicable to your cost accountants, ICWAI, and then you have CS, ICSI, Institute of Company Secretary of India. Even they see the company secretaries to report it immediately in the same fashion to the government, and even the cost accountants by ICWAI will also they will direct their members, the cost accountants, to do the same. Right? And that is covered under section 148, and for the company secretary it is covered under section 204. Right? While they are conducting a secretarial audit. Okay? Now, I understand that this is what I am supposed to do. But you understand this is a critical matter, reporting upon fraud. Even in Satyam scandal, right, if the partner of the audit firm would not be involved or something, or if they would have reported it on time that Satyam is trying to do this, he would have escaped, right? There would be no liability attached, but there were a lot of liabilities attached, even to the youngest team member. When I say the youngest team member, even the trainee or the article who was involved has been screwed up. Right? So you need to be very careful on these aspects, no matter what level you are. So what are the punishment for non-compliance? That is covered by section 143 subsection 15. Right? So the punishment is a penalty of a minimum of rupees 1 lakh and a maximum of rupees 25 lakhs. Right? You can say, no, this is a motivation. Come on, if I do a fraud, if I do a scam of a few hundred crores or few crores also, 25 lakhs is a small amount. I'll pay off the penalty and move on. Right? But understand, this is just a financial penalty. There's a lot of things that lie beyond this. This is just a penalty that is attached by this section. That okay, if you did not report, then this penalty. But if you did not report and if you are found involved, then there are a lot many things following it. Right? There are a lot of things. So let's not get into that. That is out of our topic. So the auditor will immediately report to the board and board. Okay. So this is Rule 13, right, that I have written down over here. And Rule 13 will discuss it in detail. So you can see what's written on the screen. Auditor will immediately report to the board to reply within 45 days, and within 15 days of that reply, of which the auditor will report to the CG. Right? So what happens is, if I go ahead with the entire detail of the story behind, even the fraud comes into the knowledge of the auditor. I was auditing. Suddenly I hit across something some fine day, and that is suspicious. What I do is I check. And once I find that yeah, something is going wrong, I check it further. Right? And when I identify that yes, this is a fraud, I shall immediately forward a report about that, about the entire matter. I will prepare a report that this are the year I was checking. Right, this is something I found mischievous, and when I got into it, this is what I identified. And that report that the auditor prepares will be sent to the board of directors. Right? And if that company also has an audit committee already prepared, right, then understand it's the audit committee's responsibility first to deal with the auditor. So I'll forward it to the audit committee. That okay, let's check this and let's forward it to the board and then escalate it further. So your first point of contact when you find something wrong happening is the audit committee if they exist, otherwise the board of directors. Right? Now what will the board of directors do? They'll say, oh, you found something? Come on, let's call central government. No. Because even the board of directors are not at this point of time sure about what the auditor is saying. So they'll go through the report. Right? They'll go through the report and then they will put on their replies and observation on the same. Right? They'll investigate, they'll see that okay, what you're talking, that does it make sense. So whatever observation they find during their testing and their examination of things, right, they'll be getting 45 days for that. And then they put forward their reply or observation on the same. And once we have received that reply or observation, then within next 15 days, right, the auditor shall forward it to the central government. Right? What will the auditor follow? The auditor will forward his report and also will attach the reply or the observation that the auditor has received from the board or the audit committee. Right? So there are two things. But okay, see, according to me, this is what was alarming, this is what I found, so I'm reporting it to you. Along with it, I've also discussed it with the board or the audit committee of the company, and this is the observation or the reply they have given. Right? So this will help you to take further decisions. Right? Then in case the auditor fails to get any reply, because maybe one of the board members is involved, right? So they restrain themselves. Hey, let's not reply. We are caught. Now let's find a way out in this 45 days. So in case they do not get a reply, they try to extend that let's pull it on for some time. The auditor will not wait beyond 45 days. Right? Beyond 45 days, if there is no observation, no reply, the auditor will forward the report to the central government along with a note that will contain a detail of his report that was earlier forwarded to the board and audit committee, and also specify that there was no observation or reply that has been received, and within 45 days I have forwarded. So as per law, it's time for me already to forward it to you. Right? And it goes to the government. So when we talk about central government, right, as I said, it's not a toll-free number you call, hey, central government this side, how can I help you? And you say, look, in this company, so-and-so company, I found a fraud. That's not the scenario, right? So what do? You need to know whom to apply or whom to approach in the central government. Right? Then the correct person to whom the report will be sent is the secretary of MCA. The secretary of the Ministry of Corporate Affairs is the first person or is the final person to whom you approach and submit your report. Right? And when you are submitting your report, right, it should be in a sealed, covered envelope. Right, and it will be sent by a registered post where acknowledgement is due, or by speed post. When I say registered post acknowledgement due means you go to a registered post office, you send it with an acknowledgement due, means when the report is delivered, they'll acknowledge that yes, we have received the courier or we have received the envelope that you have sent, and then that acknowledgement comes to you and you keep the acknowledgement that okay, it was not only my responsibility to dispatch, it was my responsibility to make sure that it reaches the Ministry of Corporate Affairs secretary. Right? And then what you do, once you come back home, you have got the acknowledgement. You also write an email. Right? To the Secretary of Ministry of Corporate Affairs again, in confirmation of the report sent. This is before delivery actually. You went to the post office, you dispatched it, and you came back home and you write an email. and then when it is delivered, you also get an acknowledgement. Right? And this report that you are printing, right, it should be printed on your letterhead. Right? The letterhead of the auditor containing the postal address, the email address, and the contact number of the auditor. It will not be going on the company's letterhead. It will be going on the auditor's letterhead. Right? Then the report shall be in the form of a statement, right? And that statement will be defined in ADT 4. It's a form, right? Form ADT 4. So you fill up the form ADT 4 in the matter of a statement, and then you will forward the same. Right? And the provisions, all of these of the action that has been taken, how to process, how to go ahead, will be the same applicable to the cost auditor when he is performing the cost audit as per section 148, and to the company secretary when the company secretary is performing the company secretarial audit, right, in the section 204. So do you get the entire thing? First, I was performing an audit, going very smooth. One fine day, I found something suspicious. What did I do? I looked into it, and I found, oh, this is a matter of fraud. Immediately, I prepare a report and forward it to the board of directors or audit committee. They take 45 days and investigate on the same. I don't stop. I continue with my rest of the work. Right? Then, after 45 days, I'll see, okay, did I get an observation? Did I get any reply on the same? If it is given before 45 days also, I'll take next 15 days to submit it to the central government, to the Secretary of Ministry of Corporate Affairs. Right? But if I do not get, I'll wait till 45 days, and then I'll forward the report to the secretary specifying that yes, I have forwarded this report to the board and I haven't received any reply on the same. Right? And that will be done in the envelope, which is sealed with an acknowledgement due registered post, and also followed by an email that okay, I've sent this on my letterhead. Right? And the same procedure is followed by other two also, the CS and the CWAs. Okay? So that was all about the reporting of fraud by auditor. Why I don't consider any other section to be a part of today's lecture is because this section itself was a little lengthy, right? And taking up any other section will again be a cumbersome thing and out of the zone. So when we're talking about fraud, we are into a zone, right? Be into a zone, understand this section, and move ahead to the next lecture, right? So I'll see you guys back in the next lecture. Until then, this is Abhinay Gupta signing off. Thank you and bye-bye.